Hello and welcome to Cheshire Audio. Now then, this is going to be like another recommended systems video with a bit of a tweak to it, partly because I was a bit undecided about things to sort of recommend really. But I'm going to set the scenario. The scenario is, and this is quite common actually, because I think it's like the British houses generally, there'll be one room where the hi-fi is going to go, and it's sort of the room where the family watches TV and everything else. So quite often, it can be quite a big room, but places to put the hi-fi can be a little bit limited. I've got a similar scenario at home. Speakers have got to be in one place, can't really move out. And I hear this a lot. It's sort of, well, the speakers got to go there, and I've got to go there, but I can't move them forward. So how much does that limit you on buying a decent stereo system? Because, you know, really, most people will pull the speakers out, you get a nice image, all this sort of thing. Generally, some speakers sort of like to have a bit of proximity. So if you can sort of choose something which likes to be close to a wall, or needs to be close to a wall, or something that doesn't mind being close to a wall, that's the other thing. That will help. And then you can sort of spend your money on the other bits, and knowing that the presentation is going to be correct. So what I'm going to come up with, I sort of had a system in mind, but then I sort of kept thinking, well, what about this as an alter? So what I'm going to do is sort of the generic system I would always talk about, the things that I recommend on the channel quite a bit. But there's also the wildcard system, which is kind of an alternative, which is good in other ways, or just a slightly different presentation, or various reasons, which I'll sort of go into as I go along, really. So this is going to be a record player-based system. We're thinking we've perhaps got six-ish thousand pounds to spend, something like that. Your room's going to be sort of 12 by 18, 12 by 20, that sort of thing. But you've got fireplace, speakers have got to go there. They can't move away from the wall. 6 inches to a foot maximum, no more. That's your scenario, and that is a really common, firing down the room as well, that's a really common scenario in British front rooms. I'm going to try and keep the system, the rest of the parts, to minimal boxes, so you're not got loads of phono stages and stuff everywhere. It's just going to be, you know, it's integrated amp, record player. Thinking about it, we might have a power supply, but that's kind of, I've already gone off my theories now. But yeah, well, anyway, let's start. Let's see where we go. Okay, so the record players. I mean, there's two that come to mind. The obvious one is the Riga Planar 8. I mean, it's kind of the obvious choice, really. It's a very small footprint. Everything it does everything brilliantly, really. It's very, very clean, very musical. Handles all sorts of genres really well. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't sort of have any sort of quirks or colorations that sort of lend themselves to certain types of music. It covers everything, really. Superb tone arm on it. I would tend to go with within this system, so to go for the bundle price with an ND7 cartridge, because it's really good value with that. So it's a £450 cartridge. I think you're getting something like £100 off it or something like that, really, if you buy them together. I should look that up, but I haven't. Something like that anyway. You do save money on the cartridge, and it does suit it really well. So yeah, no problem. I mean, the B8, you'll know it uses the Tancast ultra lightweight sort of plinth there, so it's very good at noise rejection. Particularly in awkward spaces where you don't really, you know, that might be having to be sat closer to a speaker or anything like that, then it's going to fare better in those sort of scenarios. Now the wildcard in this situation, it's one of my favourite brands actually. I mean, Riga absolutely dominate. Everything they do is superb, but there are alternatives. The closest alternative to Riga, I think, but not everybody's cup of tea, because they're a little bit quirky. They're not as straightforward to use or set up. But they have a great sound, and that's, yeah. Next choice is Nottingham Analog Space Deck, which has been around for years. It's a really well known and respected turntable, but people don't really talk about them so much nowadays. But it's still out there, still stands up really well. Remarkable value. This comes in at less than the price. If you put this has got an RB330 tone arm on it, Riga, and I've actually got it with an Agoka cartridge on, but there's various options for this. It's coming in at less than the P8. It's a different presentation. That's the thing I'd say about the Nottingham. It's a very different presentation. A little bit more quirky, because it's what you would sort of almost call a component record player. because we've got a separate plinth. This sort of sub-chassis arrangement is sort of sitting, not attached to the plinth at all, it's just sitting on it. And the motor, which you can see at the back there, is completely separate again. You can lift the motor off and walk away with it. All for the sake of isolation, really. But this is a different way of doing things. This is more of a high-mass turntable, so it's trying to drop all the sort of resonances down, out of the sort of vocal sort of spectrum, I suppose. The thing with the Nottinghams, you get a very, very solid presentation, very 3D holographic sort of image off them. Probably not quite as musically correct or as clean and clear as the Riga, but it's got its own sort of niceties, really. There's a lot to like with the Nottinghams. All the range is really good. I mean, when you go up from this, there's a version of this with a better bearing, then there's a version called the Hyperspace, which is like an ultra version of it, much thicker platter, much thicker sort of plinth at the bottom there. And there's a Deus, and you get into really heavy stuff then. Really heavy. I mean, the Deus is something like 50 kilos, I think. The 294, which I've done videos on. There's a great range. Slightly quirky again, because to start a Deus you have to push the platter, and then because the motor is so small, it can't start the platter itself. So you push it up to speed, and then the motor, which has virtually no torque, can take over, and it's all to do with motor noise naturally. So it's a very well thought through deck, really, and a good alternative. And I don't talk about them enough. So yeah, Riga or Nottingham, takes your choice, really. I think there's benefits for both, really. Okay, so amplifiers. Yeah, there's a couple here as well. I mean, there's the generic one that I always tend to go for at the moment. I think partly I'm doing this so I don't become boring, actually, but there is a really good alternative. If I keep sort of doing this, just forgive me, I'm trying to correct my posture, because my arm just keeps, it's like tremendous toothache in your arm. It's various trapped nerves and all sorts of things going on. It's from carrying heavy speakers up for 40 years. It's sort of broken things, I think. Yeah, two amplifiers. Yeah, the obvious one, which I always talk about as being particularly good value for money, although you would need to buy a phono card for it because it doesn't come with one, and that's the IN200 Atoll, obviously. I mean, I'm obsessed with Atoll at the moment. The observant of you will notice that this isn't a 200, this is a 100, because just as I pressed record, I remember to actually loan it out to somebody, so I'm going to give you a picture of a 100, which is kind of very similar. Yeah, so yeah, IN200, huge transformer, twin transformers, loads of drive current, will drive speakers at low volumes really, really cleanly, and it's very, very neutral. It does everything you would ever want, really. You would need to go for phono option. That's the only slight drawback is when you're ordering, you need to specify phono with it, but great all-rounder. I don't know anybody who doesn't get on with Atoll at all. It's such a likeable sound, but very, very neutral. No coloration, no superfluous stuff going on. It just gives you what the record player gives you, so to speak, just passes it across. And the next amplifier I'm thinking about, and this is partly because we're in a situation where the speakers might be a little bit closer to the wall than they should be, or whatever. There might be a little bit of a bass bloom going on. So you might need something which is particularly fast and particularly good at drive and all this sort of thing. I mean, the Atoll's good at that, but this is another alternative which is equally good and a very, very precise sounding amplifier, and that's the Exposure 2510. This is a wonderful amp. Obviously, they've been around for an awful long time, really, predating even Atoll got quite a heritage, but the Exposures predate them. Very, very, very good at small integrated amplifiers. Very clean, very clear, loads of drive. Very, very musical and natural sounding amplifiers. Don't quite have the current capability of the Atolls, but then unless you were going to specify some really awkward speakers, it was not really that necessary. So I think this is a good alternative. I always liked Exposure. I've had quite a few Exposure combinations myself over the years, and there's just something about them. Very much of the sort of character of early day name amplifiers before they went off in a different direction. But very, 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 very engaging to listen to. So yeah, I'm out of breath. Just been running up and down stairs again. So yeah, Exposure. That's what I would call the wild card. But 2 years ago, this would have been first choice, really. Okay, and speakers. Now then, got three now. Actually, just to completely blow my sort of system apart. But two from the same manufacturer. And the first one is a real favourite, and that's the Neat petites. I absolutely love the neat petites. I mean, obviously you need to buy a stand as well, but kind of designed to go close into a wall, but then quite like coming out from a wall. If you want a bit more stereo image, you can move them away from a wall, but they're not hindered by close placement at all. You get a very, very linear response from them. Very, very punchy. You know, you get the full performance from them. Really, they're not, like I say, not hindered by being too close to a wall. So these are ideal for that sort of scenario. There's also the Mystique. This is my sort of third option. The Mystique. If you imagine that as down to the floor. In fact, there's a pair here, but I haven't unboxed them yet. This is my new demonstrators in that box. They do wood finishes now. When these were launched originally, they were black or white, and it's like a texture finish. That's still available, but they do light oak and walnut as options now. So really good choice. Ribbon treble unit, very, very clean and clear. Great image placement. Everything you would want, really. You know, they need a bit of drive, but things like the exposure or the Atoll are superb with them, really. They just seem to gel with them really well. Now, the wild card in this situation, now, there are other options here as well. I mean, there's Fine Audio, who don't mind being close in. There's some of the QDOS don't mind being close in. But the one I'm going to go for, it's a speaker that works really well if you move it out from a wall, but doesn't mind being close in, and that's. Seems a bit odd saying wildcard about these, because I absolutely love these as a speaker. HIfi Mambos. I mean, they're full floor stander. Obviously a little bit smaller than the norm. I mean, the actual top sort of proportions is really small, but really big sound, really quite dynamic and punchy sounding speakers. You can see 3 drivers on there. There's actually 4. There's another driver within the cabinet further down. They're not isobaric. They're not loading the drivers in that way, but it sort of physics-wise, kids the speaker into thinking it's into a bigger cabinet than it is. But these are quite happy going close in, and the main reason is that they've got this quite clever Aeroflex porting. So they haven't got a standard port. They've got this sort of Aeroflexy thing at the bottom, and the actual speed of the air coming out of that is pretty sedate, really. So that you don't get all this bounce back that you do with porting. So they're a great. I mean, they've been reduced in price recently, actually. Because I think Gareth has realised he can produce these cheaper now. So these are down to these are about 2,500. These are down to 2,000. So they're fantastic value as well now. I mean, obviously we've got things on either side here. We've got quite a few speakers in the shop which are sort of getting on in size quite a bit. Very deep, big drivers, all this sort of thing. None of these would work in that scenario. I mean, however good your Oberon 7s are, or Opticon 6s, or the Kitchen Energies on the end there, they need space. I mean, this is really common with speakers nowadays. Most designs rely on you moving them out into the room to get the best out of them. Otherwise, the bass output just gets completely out of control. There are very, very few close proximity speakers around at the moment. And of what I've found, really, Ophidian seem to be okay with it. Fine Audio are okay, actually. I haven't actually particularly got much to show you in Fine Audio, but because of their sort of clever porting arrangement, they're quite good close in. And the little neat petites, which are one of the sort of leftovers of speakers that are designed to sit really close in, really. So there you go. So yeah, I hope you like that. I mean, that's basically, we've got 2 options of record player, 2 options of amplifier, 3 options with speakers. And I think there's a certain element of sometimes people with a turntable, not everybody wants to go for the generic choice. I mean, Riga, like I said, are really dominating at the moment, but the Nottinghams are a good alternative. They're really good, just slightly quirkier, but sort of got a bit of a more audiophile sort of feel about them, possibly. I really like the way they present the sound. They don't give an awful lot away to a Riga generally at all, really. In some respects, you could almost prefer them, the way they have this very solid soundstage. Amplifier-wise, yeah, obviously the Atolls at the moment who are completely controlling that sort of market sector, really. But the exposure is still there, and it's still a great amp, and it's does an awful lot of what the Atoll does, really. Similar sort of money, but it's got the built-in phono stage. Good old sort of British heritage as well with it, really, going back years. So 2 good alternatives. And the speakers, probably a little bit more down to personal preference, to be honest, because speakers are a bit more subjective. There's rights and wrongs, but there's still quite a subjective thing. But the little petites are superb. I mean, they don't mind being, they're sort of designed to be close into a wall. So you've got the benefit there. So positional wise, they're quite good. The Mystique needs possibly a bit more space, but a sort of designed to go close to a wall. And the Ophidians, which I said before, they're brilliant if you move them out, but they don't need to be. They still give you a really good spread and really, because of this very slow sort of designed port, the sort of Aeroflex system that they use, the airflow is very, very slow out of it. And it doesn't really cause my voice. I'm in pain with my arm, and my voice is going as well. But anyway, yeah, so some good alternatives. So we've sort of come in around the 6,000, but this is without accessories, so this is the bare essentials of equipment. So yeah, that's it really. I better stop before the pain in my arm gets too much for me to bear and my voice goes totally. I will be doing another video possibly tomorrow because I just want to sort of, basically I'm going away, just want to sort of, you know, type a few loose ends on that. So I'm going to be away for a couple of weeks. So there's going to be a bit of a void where there's no videos. So yeah, I'm going to do another one tomorrow and a bit of a news update, that sort of thing. Anyway, yeah, thanks for watching. The voice is just about hung on. I'll see you in a future video. Don't forget to give it a subscribe and a like, and I will see you soon.